Good morning. Welcome to next edition of our Friday morning theology readers breakfast, where we every Friday morning gather together. Right now over live stream, but maybe hopefully here in the future even in person, where we gather to read through classic works of the Christian heritage. Works that have lasted the test of time and have been ideas that have contributed well to Christian theology and Christian living and practice. And our last book was John Owen and the Mortification of Sin, and we finished that last week. And so wanting to shift now to a different era and a different theologian, it was suggested, and I thought it was a great idea, that we read through Augustine's Confessions. So St. Augustine. And we want to kind of read through as much as we can Augustine's Confessions. Now, just a quick note on, I guess who Augustine was. He was, or is known now as a church father, indeed, one of the greatest theologians from the early church era to have contributed to Christian thought and theology. In fact, he is the kind of bridge between the ancient church and the church fathers and into the medieval era, so that he helped kind of bridge the gap between those two eras. He lived during the end of the Roman Empire, and in fact, on his deathbed, the Goths were taking over parts of the Roman Empire, and even his own town was burning to the ground as that was happening. He was a prolific writer, and perhaps one of his most well-known writings is the Confessions, which is something of a biography of how he came to saving faith. He didn't grow up as a Christian. He had a Christian mother, Monica, and we'll hear about her. But he had a father who himself wasn't a Christian. And his father wanted him to become a successful man climbing the ranks of the Roman Empire, and sent him off to school to learn grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And in fact, Augustine was very skilled in rhetoric. He was a man who made a living, before he became a Christian, he made a living on arguing and public speaking and teaching others, tutoring others how to be a public speaker. But he was also incredibly thirsty and desirous to know true wisdom, to grow in wisdom, and read philosophy and put himself around influential thinkers and philosophers. And through that, the Lord in his grace drew him to himself through reading the philosophy of St. Paul. And we'll read about that here, how it was really in wrestling with Paul and hearing the Bible preached through a preacher named Ambrose, that he came to saving faith. Augustine is one of those guys that I think every Christian, even if you're not a Christian, everybody should read. His Confessions is one of the first autobiographies that looks inward. He kind of bears his soul, and the way in which he writes, no one had written like that in the history of ideas. It is, in fact, a confession. He not only confesses his sins, and we get the kind of development of how he devolved in his early life deeper and deeper into sin, but he also confesses truth and what he's come to believe about God. And so we get a lot of good theology. But thirdly, it's a confession toward God. He is confessing his adoration to God throughout. And in fact, we'll see here in the beginning of the Confessions that he is just amazed. His mind melts at who God is. So that's a great reminder for us. Just being reminded that there are three aspects to good confession. We confess our sins, make a confession of our wrongdoing, But we also want to confess the truths that we do believe, a kind of confession of faith. But all of that, those two together, help us to confess rightly in adoration to God. We confess the loveliness of who God is to God, and worship and enjoy him. And that's what Augustine is doing here in this book. I've got somebody at the door. So stay tuned. I'll be back in 10 minutes. This looks like somebody I need to answer at the front door. So hey, forgive me, but this is life, and I'll be back. So if you're chiming in now, just stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, peace.